The emergency doors slammed open, and Dr. Everly stormed through the sterile corridor of the ER, her eyes fixed on the stretcher she was pushing as if it were the only thing keeping the world from collapsing. Blood streaked the white floors, a vivid contrast to the cold fluorescent lights above. On the stretcher lay Waylon, early 30s, rugged in a way that suggested a life both privileged and burdened. His designer suit was torn, one sleeve shredded, and the watch on his wrist caught the harsh glow of the lights, an incongruous hint of wealth in a scene of chaos. He clutched his side, trying to suppress the groan escaping his throat. "Don't call my family. No one must know I'm here," he whispered, voice strained and raw. Everly leaned closer, her voice firm but quivering with the weight of urgency. "Sir, if we don't operate now, you'll die." For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Fear, curiosity, and a spark neither could define passed between them, a silent acknowledgement that this moment would change them both forever. Outside, the storm raged, wind lashing the hospital windows and rain pelting the roof in furious rhythm, as if the world itself sensed the life and death drama unfolding within these walls. Nurses whispered to each other, speculation fluttering through the ER like restless ghosts. Who was this man? A celebrity? A VIP? Everly ignored them. Her focus was absolute. She had trained for moments like this, but nothing could prepare her for the raw intensity of holding a stranger's life in her hands while sensing the fragile humanity beneath his polished exterior. Waylon's fingers twitched, searching for hers. Their hands met, a touch fleeting but laden with unspoken stories, a connection forged in the crucible of desperation. Scalpel. Suction. Now. Everly barked as she guided the team into the operating room, every step precise, every motion controlled, yet underneath, a pulse of adrenaline coursed through her veins. Waylon's pulse was weak, his breath shallow, sweat beading on his forehead under the surgical lights. Instruments clattered onto trays, monitors screamed warnings, and time seemed to warp minutes stretching into eternities as Everly worked. "Promise me, no one knows," Waylon whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Then trust me," Everly said, leaning close so she could feel the faint heat of his breath. "Trust me to keep you alive." His grip tightened, then slackened as anesthesia claimed him, leaving her with the weight of responsibility, a stranger's life balanced precariously on her skill and resolve. Hours passed. Every cut, every suture, every decision was a battle against mortality. Finally, silence fell, pierced only by the steady, reassuring beep of the monitor. Waylon had survived. Later, in the dim glow of recovery, Everly sat beside him, exhausted, her scrubs stained crimson from the life she had fought to preserve. Waylon's eyes fluttered open, hazel irises hazy with pain but curious, searching. "Why go this far, for me?" he murmured. "Because every life matters," Everly said softly, brushing a lock of sweat-soaked hair from his forehead. "Even the ones that want to stay hidden." A rare vulnerability crossed his face. He had lived surrounded by people who wanted something from him: power, loyalty, wealth, but she asked for nothing except the chance to heal him. And in that simplicity, he saw something he had never truly known, someone who valued him for himself. Days passed, each one stretching longer than the last as Waylon recovered under Everly's vigilant care. He remained in a quiet wing, insisting on secrecy, refusing the luxury suites offered by the hospital. Their late-night conversations began as practical check-ins but evolved into shared confidences. Waylon revealed glimpses of the empire that both defined and imprisoned him, and Everly shared fragments of a childhood shaped by sacrifice and loss. Her mother had died because they could not afford proper treatment, a memory that fueled her tireless dedication. Each moment together deepened a connection neither could name, yet both felt a magnetic pull bridging worlds of wealth and humility, privilege and sacrifice. The tension was constant, a subtle electricity crackling beneath professional courtesy. Waylon's arrogance softened when he was alone with her, but he remained guarded. He joked, tested boundaries, and teased her discipline, only to see her respond with calm defiance and gentle reproach. They circled each other like dancers unaware of the rhythm, each word and glance loaded with meaning. Yet danger loomed outside their fragile bubble. A journalist, tipped off about a mysterious wealthy patient, prowled near the hospital, hoping for a glimpse, a photograph, proof of scandal. Staff whispered, rumors fluttering through hallways like ghosts. Why did Dr. Everly spend so much time with him? Why refuse visitors? Why conceal his identity? One evening, the storm outside mirrored the tension within. Rain lashed against the windows as Wayland's voice broke the quiet. If the world finds out I'm here, everything falls apart. My family, my business. Everly's gaze held his, steady and unwavering. Then maybe it's not the world you need anymore, she said softly. Maybe it's something simpler. Something real. Their eyes held for a long moment, the spark igniting into a more dangerous flame. Just as the first threads of something profound began to form, a flash of light stabbed through the glass, a photographer capturing their secrecy. Chaos erupted. Nurses rushed. Administrators demanded answers. Everly froze, fear tightening her chest. Wayland, weak but resolute, lifted himself slightly in his bed. If you punish her, you punish the only person who reminded me what it means to live, he declared, voice steady, unwavering. Silence fell across the ward. Their bond, forged under extreme circumstances, grew stronger through every whispered confession, every subtle touch, every shared vulnerability. Wayland refused to yield to privilege or fear, and Everly refused to compromise her duty or the trust he placed in her. Their connection blossomed not through grand gestures, but through small, intimate moments. The adjustment of a blanket, the gentle hand on a wrist, the exchange of quiet smiles that spoke louder than words. Wayland's backstory unfolded gradually, revealing pressures and threats hidden beneath his calm exterior. His younger brother had been caught in a violent protest downtown, forcing him to act swiftly and secretly. Everly shared her own history, the nights spent outside hospitals, the helplessness she had felt as a child watching those she loved suffer. These admissions deepened their empathy and drew them closer, their hearts beginning to mirror each other in ways neither had anticipated. The threat of exposure never fully abated. Administrators questioned Everly, hinting at protocol violations and favoritism. The journalist lingered, a shadow always at the edge of their world. Each confrontation tested their courage, their integrity, and their growing feelings. And yet, through every trial, Wayland saw Everly's strength in full unflinching, unwavering, compassionate. And Everly saw Wayland's vulnerability, his humanity beyond wealth and influence. Late at night, when the hospital corridors were silent and only the hum of machines filled the air, their conversations deepened, shifting from necessity to intimacy. Wayland asked her about her dreams, her sacrifices, the night she had spent alone, determined to prevent the tragedies she had witnessed as a child. Everly listened, absorbing each story, recognizing the courage and pain reflected in his eyes. In turn, she noticed the cracks in his polished exterior, the loneliness that wealth could not fill, and the longing for someone to see him fully, without judgment. Every glance carried a question, every touch a promise, and every word a test of trust. Wayland confessed the burdens he carried, not just his injury, but the responsibility of an empire and the fear of losing those he loved. Everly responded with honesty and compassion, offering understanding without judgment, safety without conditions. The dynamic between them grew increasingly charged, a heady mix of attraction, respect, and the danger inherent in secrecy. As days turned into nights, the journalist became bolder, seeking any opening to expose their connection. Wayland, frustrated by the intrusion, found himself drawn to Everly's unwavering resolve, her ability to navigate chaos with grace. And Everly, exhausted yet invigorated by the depth of their bond, realized that her heart had begun to rely on his presence, that her commitment extended beyond duty into something profoundly personal. Conflict escalated when administrators formally questioned her actions. Wayland, now fully aware of the risk she had taken for him, stood by her, his voice a shield against the bureaucracy. If you punish her, he reiterated, calm yet commanding, you punish the only person who reminded me what it means to be human. His words resonated, silencing the room, asserting a truth that could not be ignored. The storm outside eventually subsided, leaving a crisp, renewed world behind, but within the hospital, a different storm brewed. One of emotions, unspoken desires, and the fragile intimacy that had formed between them. In the quiet hours, their hands met again, lingering longer than necessary, and their eyes conveyed truths neither dared voice aloud. In these moments, the boundary between doctor and patient blurred, replaced by human connection forged in crisis, vulnerability, and mutual respect. Wayland revealed more of his fears and motivations, the hidden pressures of his family and empire, the isolation of a life constantly on display yet profoundly lonely. Everly responded with honesty about her own struggles, the sacrifices she had made, and the personal cost of her vocation. Through dialogue, glances, and small gestures, trust deepened. The intensity of their circumstances magnified the emotions swirling between them, making every fleeting touch electric, every conversation a delicate negotiation of heart and duty. Days later, a critical turning point arrived. The journalist infiltrated the hospital, capturing unauthorized photographs and creating a stir. Administrators threatened to suspend Everly, citing repeated protocol violations and undue attention to a patient of unspecified identity. Wayland, still fragile but determined, intervened publicly, protecting her while revealing just enough of his own presence to shield her from the consequences. His declaration of dependence and admiration was more than a defense. It was a confession of feelings that had grown too powerful to contain. In the aftermath, the hospital stabilized, but the bond between Wayland and Everly had shifted irrevocably. Rain or shine, they found themselves drawn to each other, unable or unwilling to deny the connection forged under pressure. In quiet moments, when the world's expectations fell away, they shared laughter, insight, and intimacy, building a foundation for a romance born not of circumstance alone, but of courage, shared vulnerability, and unwavering support. The following morning, sunlight poured through the blinds, casting golden stripes across the hospital floor. Wayland sat upright, still weak, but there was a quiet determination in the set of his jaw and the fire in his eyes. Everly entered with a tray of breakfast, her steps measured, heart skipping with anticipation and fear. She tried to mask her concern behind professionalism, but the tension between them was palpable. "They're asking more questions," she murmured, voice low, careful not to let administrators overhear. "The board, the staff, they want explanations for your secrecy." Wayland leaned back against the pillows, letting out a slow, deliberate breath. "Let them ask," he said, calm but resolute. "I don't care about my reputation. Only you matter right now." Before Everly could respond, a shadow flickered outside the door. The journalist had returned, camera in hand, hoping to capture the billionaire's identity and any hint of scandal. Everly's chest tightened. She stepped between him and Wayland, her gaze sharp and unyielding. "You're not getting anything," she said, voice firm, authority radiating from every word. The journalist smirked, raising his camera. "And if I do?" he challenged. Everly's eyes narrowed. "Then I make sure the truth is what you'll never show." She didn't wait for a response, her hand steady as she guided the photographer away. Wayland watched, a mixture of awe and growing admiration softening his sharp features. For the first time, he saw the full force of her courage and integrity, and the realization struck him. He could no longer deny the feelings growing in his chest. Days merged into nights, the boundaries between doctor and patient dissolving with each shared glance, each lingering touch. Wayland refused the VIP suite, insisting on a quiet wing where privacy was guaranteed. Everly, against every rule and instinct, accommodated him, sneaking extra hours to monitor his recovery, to talk, to laugh, to connect. In those quiet hours, their conversations deepened. He revealed fragments of his empire, his control, his isolation, the burden of being constantly observed and judged. She shared her own past, the nights spent in hospital corridors, the helplessness of a childhood marked by her mother's preventable death. The contrast between them sharpened, but instead of driving them apart, it wove a delicate intimacy, a shared understanding born of adversity. Wayland teased, a playful smirk lighting his face, challenging her discipline and sharpness. Everly retaliated with quiet wit, but behind her reprimands, she savored the rare glimpses of vulnerability he allowed her to see. Each encounter carried weight, each touch a question neither dared to answer aloud. Yet danger never fully receded. The journalist remained a shadow at the edges of their lives, probing, listening, waiting for a slip. Administrators questioned Everly's actions more directly, warning her of potential suspension, professional ruin, even legal consequences. Every confrontation forced Waylon and Everly to navigate not only their growing feelings but the constant threat of exposure. Late one evening, after the hospital had quieted and only the hum of machines filled the corridors, Waylon spoke softly, leaning slightly toward her. "I've spent my life surrounded by people who want something from me," he confessed, voice low, intimate, almost breaking, "and I've given them everything but myself. But you don't ask for anything. You see me, not the empire, not the headlines. Just me." Everly's breath caught. Her fingers traced the line of his wrist, steadying both his pulse and the fragile human before her. "I've spent my life trying not to care too much, trying not to let emotions cloud my duty," she admitted. "But being with you feels impossible to ignore." Waylon leaned closer, their foreheads nearly touching. The gravity between them was magnetic, a pull impossible to resist. "Love," he whispered, "isn't a distraction, Everly. It's the only thing that makes everything else worth it." The next day, the hospital corridors were tense. Administrators had discovered that the journalist had infiltrated the hospital, taking unauthorized photographs. Staff whispered, rumors buzzing like a storm in the hallways. Everly felt the pressure tightening around her chest, but every glance at Waylon reminded her why she had risked so much. His eyes, full of gratitude, admiration, and something more profound, anchored her. Waylon's recovery accelerated, though he remained cautious, aware of the fragile security surrounding them. He allowed her small gestures, holding his hand, adjusting his blankets, sharing smiles across quiet moments. Each act was loaded with unspoken emotion, each conversation a delicate dance of honesty, teasing, and trust. Their connection deepened, growing more tangible with every heartbeat, every sigh, every fleeting touch. One afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the ward, Waylon confessed the true reason he had sought secrecy. His younger brother had been caught in a violent protest downtown, and he had risked everything to ensure his safety. Everly listened, empathy breaking through the professional boundary she had tried to maintain. "I understand," she said softly. "I lost my mother because we couldn't afford the treatment she needed. That's why I became a doctor, so no one else has to feel that helplessness." For the first time, the barriers between them cracked completely. Waylon's sharp, controlled exterior softened, revealing the man beneath the man, capable of fear, vulnerability, and longing. Everly's own defenses faltered as she realized the depth of her feelings, the intensity of a connection forged not by choice but by circumstance, courage, and shared humanity. As administrators threatened action and the journalist lingered, Waylon stood up in his bed, fragile but resolute. "If you punish her," he said calmly, "you punish the only person who reminded me what it means to live." Silence filled the room, the weight of his words pressing on every observer. Everly's eyes met his, gratitude and admiration swelling in tandem with emotions she could no longer contain. The storm outside had passed, leaving streets washed clean, but within the hospital, a storm of emotions raged unchecked. In quiet moments, their hands met, lingering longer than necessary. Their eyes spoke a language unspoken, full of longing, trust, and the dangerous thrill of forbidden connection. Every shared glance, every whispered word built a tension that neither could deny. And then, one rainy evening, the barriers fell. Outside, the downpour plastered their hair and coats to their bodies. Everly stood, heart racing, words caught in her throat. "Waylon, we come from completely different worlds. This, us, it can't last. It's too dangerous, too complicated." Waylon stepped closer, rain dripping from his coat, eyes burning with determination. "Maybe love," he murmured, voice steady over the storm, "is the only world that matters." Their hands met despite the sheets of rain, fingers intertwining. The world, with all its scrutiny, wealth, and rules, faded. Waylon brushed a wet strand of hair from her face, and for the first time, neither feared consequence nor exposure. Their lips met in a kiss that was tender yet fierce, a culmination of every secret glance, every shared heartbeat, every risk taken for each other. Time seemed suspended, the chaos of the outside world rendered meaningless by the gravity of their connection. Morning light filtered through clouds, streets glistening, rain-slicked and bright. Waylon and Everly walked side by side, no words needed. administrators, journalists, and the scrutiny of the world were still present, but they had survived the storm together. Their hands stayed entwined, a testament to courage, trust, and a love neither had anticipated but could no longer deny. Waylon, fully recovered, quietly funded a new hospital wing, not in his name, but in honor of Everly's mother, a tribute to the woman whose absence had shaped the doctor he now loved. The wing glowed with fresh paint, new equipment, and the quiet promise of hope. Everly stepped out of the hospital, exhausted but smiling. Sunlight broke through lingering clouds, painting the courtyard in gold. There he was, Waylon, coat open, hair damp, presence commanding yet gentle. Their eyes met. In that moment, every storm, every secret, every risk seemed to dissolve. Words were unnecessary. Their shared history, their sacrifices, their unspoken promises spoke louder than language ever could. He stepped forward, hands reaching for hers. She leaned into the warmth of his touch, heart pounding in resonance with his. The storm had passed, but the world held its breath as their lips met again, soft, tender, full of the weight of everything endured. It was a kiss of triumph, a kiss of trust, a kiss of love born from chaos and courage. The hospital remained alive with activity, but for Waylon and Everly, a quiet sanctuary had been created, unassailable and real. Two hearts from different worlds, once bound by crisis, now intertwined by choice. They had faced danger, scandal, and the relentless pressures of duty and expectation and emerged stronger, connected, and unafraid to embrace a love that defied boundaries.